Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Lauren, and today I am going to be talking about every single book that I have removed from my TBR since I started this channel. So if I have said it once, I have said it 1,000 times. I really strongly believe that if there are books on your TBR that you are no longer interested in and don't want to read anymore for whatever reason, I think it's really important that you should take them off. There are just too many great books out there in too little time, so I think it's important to spend your time reading the ones that you are really, truly interested in. I'm sure a few of you have wondered if, how much I take my own words to heart, so today I am going to offer up to you the books that I have, for a fact, taken off my TBR since I started this channel. I've broken this up into a few categories. The first category is books that I have taken off my TBR and they are staying off my TBR, like I'm over it. The second group is books that I've taken off my TBR but recently had a change of heart and I think I'm going to add them back in. And then the final group is books that I've taken off of my TBR but I'm still just a little bit on the fence about it. And I'm going to give you my reasons for that so you'll understand where I'm at with these things. At the end of the video, I would like to ask you to vote on the one that you would like me to add back onto my TBR. So I hope that you will stick around for that. So the first book that I have removed from my TBR and am not planning on adding back onto it is The Last Watch by J.S. Dewes, or Dewis, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. This is the first book in a series called The Divide, and I actually pulled this out of my TBR jar months back. The hold for it on Libby was too long. I was just kind of forced in this position of, I'll add it back into my TBR, which I did, and it was in there for a while. The more I thought about it, the more I was like, I'm kind of happy that it wasn't available. I'm not really interested in this book, and the reviews of this book are kind of mediocre, specifically from people that I really trust their taste in books. They complain about the plot being a little sloppy and also the character development being pretty underwhelming. Not only that, but I also know that this is more of like a military sci-fi, and what I'm discovering about my reading taste is that I don't think military sci-fi is for me. I kind of glaze over while I'm reading it. In fact, I'm trying to get through one right now that I drew in my last TBR video, and I think I'm going to end up having to DNF it. It just does not hold my interest at all. So unfortunately, The Last Watch, it's not going back on my TBR. The second book that I have removed from my TBR and don't plan on putting it back on there anytime soon is Doing Time by Jodi Taylor. This is the first book in the Time Police series, and I believe this is a spin-off of the St. Mary Chronicles. I read the first book in the St. Mary Chronicles, which I believe is called Just One Damn Thing After Another, I believe. And though I really appreciated the premise of that book and of that series, the book itself was a little bit messy. I was a little underwhelmed by the writing style, and I was absolutely not interested in continuing in that series. Because I'm not interested in that series at all and following up and finishing it, why would I be interested in getting into a spin-off of that series? So because of those reasons, I'm not reading that book. So the next category of books that I want to talk about are a couple of books that I have, after some consideration, decided to add back onto my TBR. The reason I took both of these off is basically the same reason, but have kind of gotten past that, and it doesn't really feel like a reason for me anymore, so they are going back on the list. The first book in this category is Gemina, which is the second book in the Illuminae files, and it is written by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I read Illuminae, I think probably almost 2 years ago, and really, really enjoyed it. I had a great time reading it. Also, I really enjoyed that sort of mixed media style of storytelling. So naturally, after I finished it, I wanted to continue on with the second book, Gemina. Unfortunately, though, there are some pretty mixed reviews on it. I think a lot of people just really fell in love with the first book, as I did. Expectations were just very high, I think, across the board for this book, and a lot of people wound up being really disappointed. So coming right off of Illuminae, I felt the same way and just had a gut feeling that I was going to wind up in the same boat, feeling super disappointed. So I decided it would be better off to just pull it off of my TBR. At this point though, a couple of years have passed, and whenever I think about that book, I am really still interested in continuing in that series. My expectations, I think, have receded back into something that is more realistic. So because of that, I think I'm gonna add Jemina back onto my TBR. The next book that I removed from my TBR, but I think I'm gonna add it back in, is actually Middle Game by Seanan McGuire. This is the first book in the Alchemical Journeys series, I believe, and I think the second book just came out, Seasonal Fears, I think that's what it's called. This is a young adult series. I'm actually not entirely certain what these books are about, other than alchemical stuff, and there are a couple of twins in here called Roger and Dodger. That's really it. That's all I know about this book. The main reasons that I decided to take this off of my TBR was because, first of all, much like Jemina, this book had an insane amount of hype to it, and I just tend to be skeptical. I'm skeptical of a lot of hype, I really am. But I think it was really my second reason, my second feeling about this was what ended up finally getting me to take this off my TBR, and that's that this book, this is a YA book, and at the time that I had this on my TBR, I had been reading a fair amount of YA and got really burnt out on it. And so whenever I was looking to the future and my reading this book, it was just sort of a sense of dread of reading another YA book. However, at this point, I have not been reading a whole lot of YA. I don't feel any sense of dread to pick this up just because it's YA. I know that's silly, and that's definitely not to put anyone down for reading YA. I think you should read whatever you enjoy reading. It's just my personal preference to stick to adult books. But I don't know, my interest in this has come back up. So I think I'm going to put it back on my TBR. And also, I want to mention a big selling point on this book is that my friend Leslie over at the Nerdy Narrative loves this book, and I trust her taste in reading. So I don't know, she loves it, and it really makes me want to pick it up as well. So I think Middle Game going back on my TBR. So the third and final category of books that I have taken off of my TBR are books that I'm still just a little bit on the fence about for whatever reason. The first book in this category is actually The One by John Marrs. This is a techno thriller. The synopsis is actually, it reminds me a lot of a movie that I really love, like a techno thriller sci-fi version of Timer. If you haven't seen it, watch it. If you can track it down. I can't seem to track it down. If you can track it down though, tell me, because I would love to watch it again. Anyhow, so I love that movie. This synopsis of The One reminds me a lot of that. So it naturally really made me want to pick it up, so I added it to my TBR. I wound up taking it off of my TBR for a couple of reasons. The first one being that it got a lot of hype and a lot of love, and then like many books who get that kind of hype, there was a backlash of people saying, no, it's overrated. This is a mediocre book. A second reason is that I recently read The Passengers, also by John Marrs, also a techno thriller, and was pretty underwhelmed by it. Actually, if you have read them both and you think that The One is better and still worth picking up, even if I was not crazy about The Passengers, please tell me in the comments down below. I'd love your feedback about that. So the main reason that I'm on the fence about it is because there is a TV show based on it. Whenever there's an adaptation, I tend to want to read the book first. But if you think that it's the TV show is better than the book, or if it's not really necessary to read the book to enjoy the TV show or whatever, I would love to hear about that in the comments down below, so I hope you'll talk to me about that. The next book that I'm kind of on the fence about, whether I should put it back on my TBR or keep it off, is A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. This is the first book in a series, I think it's called The Scholomance or Sholomance, I don't know how you say it. And it is a magical school concept. It's a magical school trope, which I really enjoy. I drew it on a TBR video last year, I think, at some point. And at the time, I ended up not being able to get a hold of it. The way it was just way too long, and it was a new release at the time, and I was not quite interested enough in it to buy a brand new hardcover. So I was just like, I'm gonna hold on this for now. I'll add it back onto my TBR and read it another time after I can get a hold of it. But There, very shortly after that, a whole lot of controversy came about from this book. And though I didn't read the book, I did read some different articles about it and read up on it and heard a lot of people talk about it. And, you know, I think that those complaints were completely valid. But at the time, I was not interested in weighing in on that at all. At this point, I know that the book has been re-released with some of those things taken out. I'm still curious about the book if I would like it, since I do like magical school settings. So yeah, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure if I should pick it up or not, if it's worthwhile. So I don't know. Another book that I am just not sure about is The Book of Coley by M.R. Carey. This is the first book in the Rampart series. I think it is a trilogy, actually. And it follows a character that lives in a small village that I think is surrounded by like deadly plants and vegetation or something. And I think maybe the character leaves and goes out into this like deadly wilderness. I don't know. I might be wrong. I probably am wrong. This is another one that I drew on a TBR video many months back, and I'm not sure why I didn't pick it up at the time. I think maybe I didn't have a hold of the physical copy yet and had to order it, or I don't know, maybe I was trying to get it from Libby and couldn't get a hold of it. I can't remember at the time though. I just couldn't, for whatever reason, I didn't get to this book and just thought, hey, I'll add it on to my TBR to read another time. But whenever it came to adding it back into my TBR, I started second guessing whether I wanted to do that for a couple of reasons. The first one being that the reviews of this book are honestly a little mediocre. It's also the fact that it's written by M.R. Carey, who I have read another M.R. Carey book. I read The Girl with All the Gifts and did not like it at all. So it wasn't necessarily the writing style. I just found that book incredibly predictable. So, you know, it's made me kind of question whether I might end up feeling the same about this one. So I'm not sure though. I think that the premise is still really interesting to me. I am very curious about it. The next book that I'm kind of on the fence about whether I should put it back on my TBR or not is Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. This is also a book that I pulled from a TBR video. I think whenever I pulled it, it had only been out for a few months, so the waiting list for it was massive and I could not get a hold of it before the month was up. And then whenever it came to adding it back into my TBR, I had been reading and hearing a lot of not great reviews about it, and so I decided just to keep it off of my TBR for the time being. But the thing about this book that makes me want to add it back on is that, first of all, I think that the premise is fascinating. I think it's like a robot or something that is in a store window and is watching the world go on around it, and sort of its perspective and experience, which I think is just fascinating. And also, I've read a couple of Kazuo Ishiguro books and I love his writing style. So I don't know, I think that this book may actually work fairly well for me, but coming back around to the reviews aren't great. So I don't know. I don't know if I should add this back onto my TBR or not. I just don't know. The final book on this list is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This book was one of the very first books that I added to my TBR whenever I started my channel. It just seemed like such a touching and beautiful story. From what I understand, it's a retelling of the Achilles story from Greek mythology, and I think it concerns itself with the love story of Achilles and Patroclus, I believe, and people just seem to absolutely love this book. But like all books that get that kind of praise, it also suffered a backlash of people coming back around and saying, no, it's overhyped, it's not that great, it's boring, whatever. And so that kind of swayed me to take it off of my TBR. The reason that I am still kind of on the fence about it is that the author, Madeline Miller, wrote Circe, which is a book that I really loved. I thought that the writing style was absolutely beautiful. Like, it was just, that was a great book. And The Song of Achilles actually has higher ratings than Circe. So I don't know. I'm still really curious about this book. I'm really interested to know if it is as good as so many people feel like it is. And I feel like my expectations have gone back down to a more reasonable level. So I don't have insanely high expectations for it. So I think I might really be able to enjoy this, but I'm just not sure. All right, so at this point, I would like to ask you to vote on which of the last 5 books that I mentioned that you think that I should add back onto my TBR. I would love to know which one, based on what you know of my taste in books, you think that I really need to just get back on my TBR and make happen. So if you will just put that down in the comments below now, that would be awesome. I do think it is super important to remove books from your TBR when you have lost all interest in it, but if there are enough people that are like, hey, no, I know your taste and you really will love this book, I'm gonna listen. Like, I will listen and I will read that book. I think that that is going to be it for me today. Those are all of the books that I have removed from my TBR since starting this channel. I hope that you enjoyed hearing about these books, and I would love to hear your thoughts on them down in the comments. If you also have removed them from your TBR, if you read them and wish you had removed them from your TBR, or honestly, if you read them and one of them is your favorite book and you really think I need to give it a shot, I hope that you will talk to me about it in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, I hope that you will give it a thumbs up and possibly subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.